Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 3, Chapter 11, entitled Calculation of Time from the Atom. Text number 41. Dasotaradika Yatra Pravista Paramanuvat Lakshata Nita Gatas Chanye Kutisho Hya Anda Rashaya Dasotaradikayatra Pravista Paramanuvat Lakshate Natagatasjanye Kotisho Yandarashaya Dasotaradikayatra Pravista Paramanuvad Lakshate Natagatasjanye Kotisho Yandarashaya Das Uttara Udika with 10 times greater thickness. Yatra in which Pravista entered. Paramu Anuvat like atoms. Lakshate it the mass of universes appears. Antagata come together. Cha and Anye in the other. Kotisha clustered. He for Andarashaya huge combination of universes. Translation: the layers of elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. Repeat: the layers of elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The coverings of the universes are also constituted of the elements of earth, water, fire, air, ether, and each is 10 times thicker than the one before. The first covering of the universe is earth, and it is 10 times thicker than the universe itself. If the universe is 4 billion miles in size, then the size of the earthly covering of the universe is 4 billion at times 10. The covering of water is 10 times greater than the earthly covering. The covering of fire is 10 times greater than the water covering, and the covering of air is 10 times greater than that of the fire. The covering of ether is 10 times greater still than that of air, and so on. The universe within the coverings of matter appears to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings, and the number of universes is unknown, even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universe. Translation: the layers of elements covering the universe are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. So this is very technical information about this universe. So the universe, the diameter is 4 billion miles. And the first covering is Earth, so it is 10 times that, which makes it 40 billion miles. 40 billion miles of Earth. Then Earth water. Then water is again another 10 times, so that's 400 billion. 400 billion. Earth water. Then there's a covering of fire, which makes it 4,000 billion, or 4 trillion. 4 trillion. Earth, water, fire, air, 40 trillion. Ether, 400 trillion. 400 trillion. And then Prabhupada says, and so on. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. So if one compares the size, the dimension, the diameter of this universe, if one compares that to the layers of these shells which surround this universe, then this universe appears to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings being like the shells, the shell of earth, water, fire, because these shells are so thick. And the number of universes is unknown, even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universes. Yes. So this is just one small spark of the Lord's creation. Ekam sena stato jagat. Ekam sena. That Krishna tells Arjuna, this is but a small spark of my splendor. He shows him the Vrata Rupa. So this, what we are seeing and what we are reading about in this particular universe is just a very small fragment of a small spark of the splendor of God. Splendor, power, opulence of God. Ekam senastador jagat. Jagat, this universe, is just one ek, one small fragment, one small part of the splendor of the Lord. And what we are seeing and what we're reading about in this section of the Bhagavatam is material nature. Material nature. But then we understand, according to previous acharyas, according to scripture, sastra, that there's another nature. And this nature is different. Material nature is described in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 text, chapter 7 text 4. Who knows it? Yes. Then besides this, next verse, one of our lady scholars, chapter 7, text 5. Besides this inferior energy, there is a superior energy, which are all living entities, resident, who are struggling with material nature and sustaining this universe. Aparayam etostanyam prakritam vidime param jivabhuta mahabaho yayetam dharati jagat. Besides this inferior nature, which we're talking about here, earth, water, fire, air, ether, besides this inferior nature, there's a superior nature, which are all living entities. And they're sustaining this universe, but they're also struggling with material nature. So besides this inferior nature was explained yesterday. The 11 senses, then the 5 objects of the senses, and the 8 material elements. In other words, the 24 elements. So besides this material nature, which is comprised of the interaction, permutations, combinations of the 24 material elements, there is another nature. Now what is the nature of this other world? Chapter 8 of Bhagavad Gita. Parastasmat tu bhavo vyakto vyaktat sanatana. Besides this manifested and unmanifested world, there is another world which is unmanifested, which is never subject to manifestation and unmanifestation, is eternal. So besides this thing that we're seeing, which is manifested and unmanifested, there's this material world. There's a whole nother world, there's a whole nother dimension, there's a whole nother nature. Parastasmat tu bhavo vyaktat vyakta sanatana. And that the nature of this other world is that it is not avyak, unmanifest and manifest. It's eternal, it's supreme. So this is the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, there is no deterioration, as we explained yesterday about the time factor. The time factor is there, but it works in a completely different way. Prabhupada has said also, time is conspicuous by its absence in the spiritual world. So time is there, but it works completely differently. It's not as we know it in this material world. And the law of karma, kala, karma, ganani no, kala, karma, ganani no, kala, time factor, karma, action, reaction, guna, modes of material nature. And these are all these are all prevalent. These are all very much here in this material world. But in the spiritual world, kala, in the same sense that it's here in the material world, is not there. Karma, is karma there in the material world? Ravesh? Karma, Karma, action, reaction, in the spiritual world. There's no karma in the spiritual world. One cannot go there without being, one has to become free from all karma, good and bad, in order to gain entrance into the spiritual world. So there is no action of karma. There is no kala, as we know it in the material world. Kala being time factor. Kala, karma, ganani, no. And the modes of material nature, do they take effect in the spiritual world? There's no ignorance, there's no passion, there's no goodness. So these are all absent. And then in the material world, we have the Upitastrane Mantecha. Who is he? The overseer, the witness, the permitter. Who is that? The super soul, the Paramatma, Ishvara Parama. This Paramatma, Savashchami Dvidishan Vishto, Ishvara Sava Bhutanam. He is within the Hriddhi, heart, the super soul. So he is here in the material world, definitely, super soul. He's in every Paramanu. But in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, is the Paramatma there? No, because the Paramatma, he is the time factor. Due to the influence of the Paramatma, everything happens in this material world. One gets karma, modes of material nature working. Time is active. But in the spiritual world, there is no need. There is no kala, there is no guna, there are no karmic reactions. The super soul doesn't need to oversee and permit things. So the super soul is not present there in the spiritual world. But unfortunately, we are here in the material world. That is the problem. So we want to go back to the spiritual world. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has described two things: Upadan Karan, Namitya Karan. Karan means Savakarana Karanam. Karan means cause. Upadan, Namitya. These are different. Upadan, Upadan, U-P-A-D-A-N, Upadan, Namitya. These are two different things. Now one is the efficient cause, and one is the material cause. Just like one is primary and one is secondary. Upadan is the efficient or the primary cause. Namitya is secondary or the material cause. So an example, if a potter, a man who makes pots, if he comes and he makes a pot with clay, And the clay is Upadan Karan. The clay is the primary cause. But the potter who made the pot, he is the secondary cause of the pot. Namitya Karan. You understand? So Upadan will be the clay. Namitya is actually the pot, is the potter who made the pot. Without the clay, no pot. So you can see Upadan, which is the primary cause, is actually more important. This is very important because this is explained by, we're going to use this to explain about bhakti. This is Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur talks about this. So I'm just explaining in terms of Sankhya first. So Upadan means the primary cause or the efficient cause, and Namitya is secondary cause, or it's called the efficient cause. And now one example of the pot. The clay is Upadan, primary cause, and the potter who made the pot, the clay pot, he is the secondary cause. Or like this chadar, or the cloth you are wearing. The thread, the actual thread, is the primary cause, Namitya, Upadan. And the weaver, he is the secondary cause that made that article, piece of cloth. He is the Namitya. The weaver is Namitya Karan. But the cloth itself, the thread, is Upadan Karan. So primary, secondary. Or efficient cause, Upadan Karan, efficient cause, material cause. So in our practice of bhakti, also we should understand this, that everything we do, it can be, things we do can be Upadan Karan or Namitya Karan. Things that we do in the process of bhakti. Upadan Karan is more important. Namitya Karan is secondary. So the activities we perform in sadhana bhakti, some of them are Upadan and some of them are Namitya. Just like chanting Krishna's name, that is of prime importance, is it not? Chanting Krishna's name. So that is Upadan Karan. It's so important. But putting on tilak is not so important. You can be a devotee of Krishna without putting on tilak. It may be that you forget to put on tilak. So putting on tilak is Namitya Karan. You understand? If you leave out, if you forget, or somehow or other you don't do Namitya Karan, it's not harmful. If somehow or other you forget or don't put on tilak, it's not like harmful, because it's Namitya Karan, it's secondary. But if somehow or other you do not chant, that's Upadan Karan, then that's very harmful. So in the process of bhakti, what we do can fall into these two categories. So Upadan Karan is like the essence of what we are doing, Sara, Ansi. Ansi Bhav means the essence. So it is very important that we understand the essence of what we are doing in bhakti. And not get too much bewildered by Namitya Karan, or these more superfluous things, the secondary things. So Upadan Karan means the very essence of what someone is doing. So in bhakti, what are we trying to do? What is the essence of all advice? And so many rules and regulations are given, isn't it? Nectar Devotion describes so many rules and regulations, but all of these rules and regulations can be summed up in two. What are those two? Two? Yes. What did you say? Yes. To always remember Krishna and never to forget Krishna. Prabhupada said that all other rules and regulations are subservient to those two. So many rules, Vajra Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Chapter 8 of Nectar Devotion, so many things we should do and shouldn't do, 64 Angas. But everything is in these two. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So actually this is the essence of what we're doing, of what we're trying to do. Whatever we're doing, it should be to achieve this. Tanama Rupa Chiratadi Sukitena, 24 hours a day, Smritya, Smaranam, Rasana, Manasa, Niyoja, Kilam, Akilam, Upadasa Saram. Kilam, all the time, one should utilize all one's time, 24 hours a day, in thinking of Krishna. So this is actually the essence of what we're doing. And the activities which support that thinking of Krishna, then that is Upadan Karan. Those activities which directly support this thinking of Krishna. But if in our devotional activities we do activities which as a result we're not thinking so much of the essence, we're not thinking so much of Krishna's name, form, pastimes, then this can be, then we can be missing the point. So we should understand that the essence of all advice is to think of Krishna, and we should accept those things which are favorable for thinking of Krishna. So this is Upadan Karan, accepting those things favorable for thinking of Krishna, like chanting, like reading, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. But we should always be remembering what we're doing. We should always be, the point is that we may be doing some devotional service like cleaning the floor, but we may not be thinking of Krishna. Now if we're cleaning the temple floor and we're thinking of Krishna, literally thinking of Krishna, then that's Upadan Karan. That's very good. But if we're not actually thinking of Krishna, in that activity, doing something else, thinking of something else, that is not so good. That doesn't become Upadan Karan. So the essence of everything we're doing within the realm of sadhana bhakti is to try to gain thoughts of Krishna, thinking of the Lord. Prabhupada is described in Nectar Devotion that one should think of Krishna as he is performing his activities in Vrindavan, as he spoke on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. One should train the mind to think of Krishna in this way, and then Prabhupada used the word, he said this is the mental culture of Krishna consciousness. It's in the introduction, Nectar Devotion. The mental culture of Krishna consciousness. So the mental culture of Krishna consciousness is to try to train one's mind in such a way as to always think of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada also named the society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to become conscious of Krishna. So this smaranam, remembrance, is so essential. And this is what we have to pray to Krishna for. This is what we have to pray for, that we can always have some remembrance of the Lord during our activities. Whatever it is, whatever our activities are in the realm of sadhana bhakti, we should try to cultivate thoughts of Krishna. According to our qualification, we should try to think of Krishna. But if we act externally by performing the different activities within the realm of sadhana bhakti, but internally we are not attempting, it's very difficult to think of Krishna, but at least attempting to think of Krishna, and then we won't get such a good result. So one has to train oneself. One has to train. This is the mental culture of Krishna consciousness. So initially we may have to force ourselves. Just like in the morning. You have to force yourself to get up. You have to force yourself. Prabhupada gave two examples. That in the months of Magh in India it is cold, but a man will still take his bath. And in June it is very hot, but the lady will still go and cook in the kitchen. So she may tolerate and force herself. They may force themselves, tolerate the difficulties and force. So we may have to force ourselves before there is some nice remembrance of Krishna. We may have to, some little force may be required. We may have to force ourselves a little bit. So this doesn't hurt. Some forcing oneself a little is not, at least initially, but after some time it's expected that one may develop some genuine taste. And then one's impetus for performing the different practices of devotional service isn't so much that one is forcing oneself, that one is doing it out of fear or respect or reverence, but more one is doing it because one becomes very attached, attracted. One develops some taste or relish for doing that activity. You understand? Just like when we get initiated, we take a vow that we will chant 16 rounds. And for a lot of devotees, they're chanting their 16 rounds out of a sense of duty. It is my duty. I took a vow out of respect for the promise they made to their guru. Because Shastra tells you you must do it. Because Prabhupada has said in Shastra, Prabhupada's commentaries have said 16 rounds. So it is more out of respect. It is more out of reverence. I have respect for my spiritual master, for what Prabhupada has said, therefore I must do it. It is more out of fear. If I don't do it, then I won't be able to live with myself. No one will know, but I feel so guilty. It's more out of fear. Fear, respect, reverence. So that may be there. But after one has been practicing the principles of devotional service, like chanting for instance, for some period of time, and anarthas have gone from the heart sufficiently, not completely, but some anarthas have gone from the heart, then one starts to develop a relish, a taste, a very sweet taste for chanting the Lord's name. This stage is called ruchi. And on this stage of ruchi, the impetus for chanting is not out of fear, respect, or reverence, but it's because you want to do it. You have an overwhelming taste to chant. And immediately you'll start doing more than 16 rounds. Immediately you'll start chanting more. It is not that anyone will have to tell you. Immediately you will start chanting more because you have some taste. Actually, you cannot stop chanting. As that ruchi thickens and becomes higher to ashakti, that taste becomes more and more overwhelming. And you'll find every opportunity to chant without shunning your responsibilities. You will find every opportunity to chant. And as that ashakti comes even higher into bhav, namagana sada ruchi, constantly chanting. When there are 9 characteristics of bhav, and one of them described by Rupa Goswami is namagana sada ruchi, overwhelming taste for chanting, always chanting. And we see this in the example of Raghunath Das Goswami, 1 lakh every day. Why so much taste? Haridas Thakur, so much taste. All of the Goswamis chanting so much. Although they were very busy, they were as busy as you. They were writing so many books. Raghunath Das Goswami is excavating Radhakund. He was also busy, but overwhelming taste for chanting. So he always had time to chant. So, but initially, our practice of chanting and the other angas, the other limbs of devotional service, may be more out of fear, respect, reverence, like this. So that's all right. There's no harm. It's very good. But at some point or other, as the anarthas are removed from our heart, then we want to develop some deeper taste. Param drisvanabhantante. So this comes actually at ruchi. And then, as I explained, the impetus, the impetus for performing activities in devotional service, everything, whatever it is, chanting, preaching, distributing books, everything, the impetus has changed, and it's more because one develops some, taste. So this is what we want. We have to go from anishta bhakti, which is unsteady, flickering, and we have to go to nishta, which is quality of steadiness, nishta. And then we have to, samarada, by mercy, and jump from nishta to ruchi. And on this ruchi, that is where taste begins. And then ruchi is immature attachment. By more mercy and practice of sadhana, practice of hearing and chanting, one can go to mature attachment, which is ashakti. It's called mature attachment. And then by further mercy and more practice of hearing and chanting, and sadhana bhakti, one can go to bhav, and then you go into the realm of bhava bhakti. So this is what we want to do. This is actually the goal of what we're doing. This is what we should want to gain. And bhakti is for gaining entrance into bhava bhakti. So the purpose of practicing our sadhana bhakti is to elevate ourselves to these higher stages. This is the purpose of what we're doing. This should always be in our mind. We should always be remembering this. We should always be focused on this. That what I am doing, cleaning, puja, preaching, distributing, management, studying the scripture, chanting Hare Krishna, the purpose of this is so that I can elevate myself, from anishta to nishta to ruchi to ashakti to bhav. This is why I am doing this. This is what I want. This is the goal. So we should always remember this. This is the essence. This is what we want to achieve. And then from having attained a very elevated position of bhava bhakti, we want to try for that thing called prema bhakti, pure love. So, any questions?
In the real world, bhava bhakti is anartha still there?
What do you think?
Yes.
Can you give an example? Anyone? Bharat Maharaj. If you look at the characteristics of devotional service, as Prabhupada has described in Nectar Devotion, he uses different examples. There are 9 characteristics of Bhava Bhakti. So one of the characteristics of Bhava Bhakti is to become detached. Avyakta manasunyate viruktum. Viruktum, to be detached. And Prabhupada says the example of this is Bharat Maharaj, that he had such a wonderful kingdom, beautiful wife, loyal citizens, but he became detached. He just left them all. So he is the example of someone on the stage of Bhav. And he went to a secluded place and he engaged in practice of bhakti. But somehow or other, he had some anatta in his heart. And as a result, he became attached to a deer. So there was something there in his heart. So in the stage of bhav, there can be something. It is described, anatta can be like sniff. It's like a sniff. That's how it is. And the example given is if you take a pot and you fill it with mustard oil, and you empty that pot. So there is no mustard oil in that pot, yet still the smell, gandhi, is there. So there is the gandhi of anatta in the stage of bhav. But mature bhav, which goes into prema, then all the anattas are gone. So even in the stage of bhav, there is this slight chance, and the example is Bharat Maharaj. But then consider Bharat Maharaj. So he became attached to a deer. So what happened? He took birth as a deer, and then after that what happened? He got the association of Bhaktivedantas, right? He used to listen to them discourse about Krishna. And then he took birth as Jad Bharat, and then when Jad Bharat left his body, he went back to the spiritual world. So once you get to such an exalted stage, Krishna's not going to let you go. You're destined to go back to Godhead. But you may have some very temporary deviation for one life or two lives. But once a devotee is coming to these higher stages like Ruchi, once he comes to these higher stages, then his the goal is there. Whether it's one life, two lives, three lives, four lives, he's going to go back to Godhead. So Bharat Maharaj, in a broader sense, he went back to Godhead. The other example is Chitraketu Maharaj. Chitraketu Maharaj, he had Sakshat Darshan. He saw Lord Narayan, is it not? Chitraketu Maharaj, he saw Lord Narayan. But he engaged in what appeared to be Vaishnava Aparad. It wasn't real Vaishnava Aparad. He said something to Lord Shiva. And Parvati became disturbed and cursed him. So he was cursed to take birth as a demon, Vitrasura. Chitraketu Maharaj took birth as Vitrasura. But his bhakti was intact. He had the body of a demon, born into the family of demons, but his bhakti was burning in his heart. And although he was a demon, inside he was a great devotee. In other words, his bhakti was intact. The same with Bharat Maharaj. He came to such a high stage, he deviated, but his bhakti was kept intact because he had the consciousness of a human being in the body of a deer. So his bhakti wasn't disturbed. Do you understand? And then as Jad Bharat, his bhakti was still intact. So once you get to such high stage, then it's sort of plain sailing. But the examples are there in Srimad Bhagavatam. So we should be careful. That's why the examples are there. That if someone like Bharat Maharaj can deviate, what to speak of us? And therefore those examples are there. But if we had the option of taking birth as a deer, and then one more birth, and then going back to Godhead, I think it's quite good. I think we should go for it. Just two births. Sometimes in Vrindavan, we walk around, and then you see these dogs walking around. The dogs in Vrindavan have a special quality, and they're the most out-of-it dogs you've ever seen. Sometimes they have sores, they're completely straggly, they're the most horrific, out-of-it entities one has ever seen. And you look at them sometimes with a little bit of compassion. So I remember I was doing that. And I was thinking, just a minute, what am I doing? I'm looking at this dog. I remember it was in the River Jamuna. I'm looking at this dog with some compassion. But actually this dog is far more fortunate than me. Because the average life of a dog is 12 or 13 years. And at the end of their life, this dog is going to go back to Godhead. Or if it doesn't exactly go back to Godhead, it'll take birth again somewhere in Vrindavan. This dog is not going to go out of Vrindavan. It's not going to run out of it. It's going to stay here. So in 12 or 13 years, less than that, maybe in 5 or 6 years, this dog is likely to be dead and back in the spiritual world. And I'm still struggling. I'm still struggling with my senses. And I leave Vrindavan, and come to the West. It's dangerous. What happens if you die or something? So this dog, I'm looking at this dog with compassion, but I'm not seeing, through the eyes of the scripture. I'm not seeing with realization. This dog is actually much more fortunate than me. The dog should be looking at me with compassion. And then I started to think, wow, such a fortunate dog, such a fortunate, straggly, dirty dog. Huh? Wonderful. And that is actually like when Shivananda is saying, when he saw the dog in the association of Mahaprabhu, then he offered obeisances to that dog. Did you ever hear of that? You know, Vaishnava can be so humble that he will offer his obeisances to a dog. So Shivananda is saying offered his obeisances to the dog. Anything else?
You've been talking about the dog who was sitting one time with Jayapaka Maharaj in Mayapur. The devotees, it was sometime back, these devotees were talking about a dog who would come to the temple and offer obeisances at night, and he would leave. And Maharaj was saying, devotees saying that Maharaj didn't leave, so he went to see, and they actually saw this dog would come every night and offer dandavats to Partha, and he would leave.
Yes. It's amazing. Anything else?
Not directly reading Prabhupada writing on Krishna book how Nanda Maharaj and Nadi Yashoda went to Mathura and Krishna and Balaram went. But then, even though Krishna and Balaram were still there, they wanted to go back to Vrindavan. So, Shastra saying about how they, even though Krishna and Balaram were in Mathura, they were suffering so much separation even by going back to Vrindavan from them, but they still wanted to go back to Vrindavan.
There's what is levels in Hindi? Levels of understanding. Huh?
There's one word which is called that.
I can't remember the word. Anyhow, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti has explained in his commentaries, and there's different understandings. There's different. So one is that Nanda Maharaj went with Krishna and Balaram to Mathura. He went, and there Krishna and Balaram they dealt with Kamsa. They killed him, and then they had some relationship with Vasudeva and Devaki. And then all the Mathura Vasis approached Krishna and Balaram and told them, you should stay here in Mathura. Why? Because your mother and father, Devaki and Vasudeva, they've suffered so much. And you should be with them. And also you should have your Brahmin initiation. And you should go to Gurukul. And you should do your studying. Because you're the right age now. So the Mathura Vasis were putting so much pressure and giving so many arguments. And Nanda Maharaj was feeling very awkward. Nanda Maharaj is feeling very awkward indeed. So for some days, Krishna and Nanda Maharaj didn't really speak so much. And then one evening, Nanda Maharaj was sitting somewhere in Mathura, somewhere in the palace, and he was weeping because he had some idea what may happen. And he asked Krishna and Balaram, they came and sat on each side of him, and they asked him, why are you lamenting? And he described that he felt on the one hand that it was right that Krishna and Balaram stay in Mathura with Vasudeva and Devaki, and the mood he was getting from all the Mathura Vasis was that Krishna and Balaram should stay in Mathura. So he was thinking maybe this should be. So this is one understanding, that they did that. But Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains that the principles of bhakti, there's a law in bhakti, and that law is that wherever the love is the strongest, that is where Krishna will go. This is like a law in bhakti. So the love and the affection of the Mathura Vasis, no doubt, is very intense, but it is not as deep has the affection and the love that the Vrindavan Vasis have, the residents of Vrindavan itself. So, if Krishna is this principle of bhakti, that he is attracted, that he is controlled, that he goes where the bhakti is the deepest, this means he had to go back to Vrindavan. It means he couldn't stay in Mathura, because it would be against the principles of bhakti. Because there is more bhakti in Vrindavan, and he goes where there is the bhakti, the love. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives another explanation, and that explanation is that Krishna went back to Vrindavan with Nanda Maharaj, that he actually went back. But he went back in his bhav expansion. You read that? It's there. Prabhupada says this word, bhav expansion. That Krishna went back with Nanda Maharaj and Madhya Yasoda in his bhav expansion or bhav manifestation. It's on the first page of that chapter. And he, in Mathura, he left a different expansion, his Vasudev expansion. So there's a different Krishna in Mathura, in Vasudev Krishna. It's a different one. It's a different Balaram. And the original Krishna, Bhagavan Swayam, he went back to Vrindavan in his bhav expansion. This is the word that Prabhupada uses. And there he associated with the residents of Vrindavan in his bhav expansion. So he didn't leave. A little bit clearer. So don't spread any rumors that he left, because he didn't. Anything else? All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.